All right, hello again, everybody. This is Derek. I'm going to take this off. Coming back at you with some more Wargaming goodness. Got a bunch of things planned for today. Don't know how many of them I'm going to be able to get a hold of or get to, but let's go ahead and activate this camera. Ba-bam. Okay, so I've got okay, where's my autofocus? There you are. All right, so our citizen is still loading. I'm going to allow it to load and come up on the screen in the background. You guys don't need to hear it or anything. And I was trying to get ready for my Star Citizen live stream, which is going to be at noon today. But in the meantime, I had put together some Germans. I finished them. In time for us to work on my 100 Years War English. These guys, I just finished, just moments ago, finished putting the tufts on. I spent some time painting on the AK snow. Yeah. So let's go ahead and I just want to organize these, put these in a little cracker box. And then I can carry them more conveniently. Now, if you're interested in seeing what these figures look like, I will be doing a video, and you guys can always watch that video later. But what that video is, it's going to be called, What Have I Done Lately? Or what have I done? Like, oh my God, what have I done? That kind of thing. And what I normally do in that series, the What Have I Done series, is I show off whatever miniatures that I've painted for the store. Not for my personal collection. If I'm painting for my personal collection, it would be one of my projects, right? It would be, in this case, it would be like my World War II project, or World War II bolt action project, or something like that. I think, nope, I couldn't put two anti-tank guns in a box. Okay, well, fudge. Now, my anti-tank guns, if you know anything about the way I like to do anti-tank guns, is I will base the individuals separately so that, like if you take a casualty, you can remove him, and then Or if you need to abandon the gun, you can remove the figures. So, yeah. Something in my mouth. Don't know what it is. Yeah, no. Blah, 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 blah. All right. This can go over there if there's room. There is. Okay. I don't think I soaked in this brush or this brush. Might have. I don't plan to do any brushing. I do plan to do okay. Do some filing. And some trimming. Okay. Well, I just washed these in soap and water. I filled the bowl with water and a few squirts of hand soap. And then I used this soft bristle 1-inch brush. Yeah, it's a 1-inch brush. And I agitate them like a washing machine. I go through there and I do that about 4 or 5 times to get the majority of the mold release off of the model. Now there's still going to be water on these models. It takes a few minutes to dry. I like to give them like 15 to 30 minutes to dry. So in the meantime, I'm going to show you what I'm working on so you can kind of get an impression. I'm going to put it up on the screen. And of course, Star Citizen still hasn't loaded. I might need to just Control-Alt-Delete. Go to my task manager. Go to Star Citizen and end task. Go to the launcher, end task. Okay, good. Now, why or what am I missing over here? My transition is here. Huh. But the go live and all that, those buttons are missing. Where are they at? Docks. I might have turned one off. Controls? Yep, that's it. I turned the controls dock off. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to go to Meg Army Lists, and you can kind of see what I'm working with. Now I'm having to look around this camera, but you don't mind. You'll be all right. Oh, wrong camera. Going to 5512, right? There you are. There she blows. Yeah, that works. Okay, so we're working with the later 100 Years War English, because Agincourt was 1415, and this has a 1415 year start. The just the straight up 100 Years War English, I do believe, goes from like 13 something, 1360 or something like that, to 1414, and it doesn't do Agincourt, which is weird. Okay, so I would have thought it would have gone at least to Agincourt, but I don't know. I guess right before Agincourt, they kind of restructured their army, and then they kept it all the way till 1453. Okay, so whoa. There we go. Just looking at the initial army list, I don't know if you guys play Meg or not, but if you don't, I'm going to give you a real quick, super easy to understand overview of the army list, or how to read the army list. Okay, so we're going to look over here on the right side, right? You see the minimum and the maximum number of stands you're allowed to have in your army, right? You're only allowed to have a certain number of stands, or you have to have at least a certain number of stands to make it play balanced, right? And then that is if you're playing like a point-based tournament style meeting engagement, you and your opponent, or whatever. And these are the points per base. So like if I was getting English Knights, they would cost me 148 points per base. Okay? But I don't have to take any because it says minimum 0. I don't have to take any knights. But if I do take knights, there's the UG. An UG is a unit group. Okay, so they have something called tugs, where you tug it, or they have things called stugs. So a tug is a tactical unit group, or think of it like your basic unit. It's your melee, your archers, that kind of guys. And then your sugs are your skirmishers, skirmish unit groups, and they pretty much don't count towards your army getting destroyed. So, but your tugs do. So the UG size is set in stone. You have to have 4 bases to make a unit. Some units, let's go to the second page. Some units give you an option where you can have either one number or another number. It's up to you how you want to organize your army. But they have to be at least 4 or 6. This one does, the Welsh Spearmen. Okay, but we're going back to my English Knights right there. So if I'm going to have English Knights in my army, because remember, minimum and maximum, I have to have the maximum 4. And that would be a lot of points, right? And then if I want to give them the option to be able to dismount, I have to pay 6 additional points per base. Okay. Most importantly is what I'm trying to get at is my longbow, because that's what I'm getting ready to put together. I don't need any knights. I don't have to have the best longbowmen, right? I don't have to have any of them. But I do have to have just regular old longbowmen. Now, it says I only have to have 4 bases. That's it. Just 4 bases of longbow. But even then, that's the minimum, of course. And the maximum is 16 bases of longbow. Okay. So, if you look at this line, it says longbow with men-at-arms. Okay. That is called a mixed tug. Right? Okay. A mixed tug is 2 types of units or 2 types of troops in one unit. And in this case, it's longbow and men-at-arms. Okay. So the units are 4 bases. But in this case, and you have to have at least 4 bases of longbow with men-at-arms. So the way mixed units are displayed on the table is $14.53. Yeah, I'm actually aiming towards $14.31-ish when Philip the Good took over. Okay, but either way, $14.53 would be just fine. But so if you split, you have to split your unit in half. So I have to have 2 bases of longbow and 2 bases of men-at-arms. Okay, you're following along. Okay, good deal. Miniature-wise, you have to make it distinct, like use longbow figures for your longbow bases and use men-at-arm figures for your men-at-arms. Duh. Why do you play a miniature game if you're not going to use the right miniatures? Of course, no proxies, okay, unless you have to. But in my case, I don't, so they're going to be exactly what they're supposed to be. Plus, if you ever go to a tournament or a head-to-head, a face-to-face, you should always have the proper miniatures, and they should always be painted. And they should be based appropriately and everything. Basically, you should be following the rules if you're going to play a game. But if I'm playing locally with my friends, and I just don't happen to have any English knights, but I've got some French knights, I might put them out and just say, hey guys, these are French knights, but we'll just call them English for the day, you know, and nobody would care. Everybody would be happy with that. But, okay. So just to get started, I have to have 2 bases of longbow per longbow with men-at-arms unit that I have. Formed loose. You notice this one is drilled loose. Drilled means they maneuver for less points, so they actually maneuver better, right? But formed is not bad at all. Tribal is pretty bad. That means they're just a mob. But drilled loose is part of my best. But if I'm going with a unit of longbow and men-at-arms, I need 2 bases of 3 figures. So that means a total of 6 figures. That's not a whole lot of figures, right? Okay. And I could, if I wanted to replace all, this is options down here. If I wanted to replace my mixed tugs with just longbowmen, I could do that, right? And their points would be less, but they would not have the men-at-arms feature. All the stats are the same if you notice, but they wouldn't have the men-at-arms feature of melee expert, right? So you basically are losing melee expert if you do that. And there's no real advantage to do that, other than saving points. And you can convert any number of them. Or if you want to downgrade their armor, you could do up to half of them. You could downgrade from protected to unprotected and save even more points. But I'm not doing that. I'm focusing here. So I like to try to get close to the maximum, because I'm a crazy person like that. So I can do 16 bases of longbow with men-at-arms. What that really means is 8 bases of longbow, right? Because the other ones are men-at-arms. But if you look down here, here it is. An equal number of longbowmen without men-at-arms must be taken. See the equal sign? So if I take 16 bases of with men-at-arms, I have to take 16 bases of just longbows, which I'm okay with that. So, and this is what I plan to do. So, got a calculator. Okay, so I'm not going to do full 16 bases, right? I'm only doing 8 bases. But 8 plus 16 is 24 bases. I have to have at least 24 bases of if I want to max it out, right? Okay. But I want to actually max it out. So I'm going to take the retinue longbowmen and men-at-arms. So that's going to be another 4, 5, 6 bases, right? 4 for this one, and then only half of those, which would be 2. So it'd be 6, because the other ones would be men-at-arms. So for me to build an army with as many longbow units as I want, not counting the upgrade, I have to have 30 bases of men-at-arms. Longbowmen. Times 3 figures per base, 90 figures. So I'm going to be painting over the next couple of days 90 longbowmen. Okay, that's going to be a lot. All right. So that's going to be my longbow. And then men-at-arms, I have to do... Okay, let me try to figure out the men-at-arms. I think I already did figure this out. Well, personally, I figured it out. But there's only 2 bases of men-at-arms times 4, because I can only make 4 units. So that's 8. And then 2 more up there. So that's 10. So I can have 10 men-at-arms bases. Now, men-at-arms are, they're not loose. They're actually mounted close, which is 4 figures. So 40 men-at-arms. But I'm not sure. I'm only doing that so that if I ever wanted to, because I wouldn't have to, because your retinue of longbow with men-at-arms, the whole unit is loose. So I technically should have 3 figures on the men-at-arms base as well. But if I scroll to the next page for optional troops, men-at-arms are considered close. right? And they're fully armored. They don't get this fully armored, two-handed cut and crush, melee expert. They don't get all that. So I probably should just put 3 figures on a base, and it will let my opponent see that they are also loose and they're not like fully armored cut and crush men-at-arms. See, if the horses dismount, they're close, fully armored cut and crush. But when it comes to the mixed tugs, see, I thought about just making them like a normal men-at-arms. That way, if I ever needed to, I could just pull them and say, check this out. It's a men-at-arms unit. But I think I could get away with 30 models. Of English men-at-arms. I do also have billmen, but you can see you can only have 3 units of 4, which that's no problem at all. Being close, that's 4 figures per base. And I have Welsh spearmen. I'm gonna build a unit or 2 of Welsh spearmen, and they can be either 4 or 6. But what's weird is the maximum you can have is 6. So you could have a unit of 4 and just leave it at that, or you can flesh it out and have a unit of 6, which is probably what I'm going to do. And then I'm not going to put English crossbowmen or I don't know what else I'm going to do. No javelins, nothing like that. Because why do I need javelins if I've got units and units and units and units of longbowmen? All right. So, okay, what'd you say? 90. I guess I'll see you on the dark side of the moon. Yeah, right. That's exactly right. No, 90 won't take me that long. Hopefully. And these guys are the 90 I'm going to be working with. I think I've got 95 or 96 here. If I do, I'll just wind up not using 5 or 6 miniatures. Okay, I don't have anything to drink. I got a little bit. I'm gonna have to quench my thirst. With something a little substance. Reaching for a monster. I keep them by my desk. Oh, come on. There we go. The little, what do they call that? The tab. Okay, let's bring this microphone over a little closer when I turn. All right, so I bring the trash can between my legs. I'm going to swap glasses, going with a little bit more detail. Okay, that'll work. Okay, so 30, like 1/3 of these models are Blue Moon, and like 60 of them are Old Glory. And I'm not trimming them or cleaning them. I'm just filing the base. Because once I get them all based, i.e. bases filed, then I'll go back over and touch them. So Sean, I don't know if you were here right when I started, but I have Star Citizen scheduled for 12 o'clock. I'm going to be grinding some Microtech rep. I don't remember if you were on last night when I got killed, but I went into a bunker and all of a sudden there was a desync. So I would shoot and the bullets would fly off at a different angle. And the bad guy closed in on my position and I couldn't switch guns. I had my sniper rifle out and it wouldn't let me switch guns. And he eventually just came up on me and killed me point blank. I felt violated. And I was frustrated enough, and it was time, because I needed to work on those German figures. It was time for me to log off anyway. So I just said, screw it, I'm just going to log off. And I logged on this morning for about 15 minutes. Just re-equipping my character, putting armor on. And then I got to a point where I wanted to start looking through my weapons to see what I had and setting myself up with, you know, a Gallant and some other weapons. And inventory stopped loading. So I'm thinking that I was having problems with the Asia server. So I switched to the EU server this morning. I mean, just moments before I started logging in. And it gave me an infinite loading screen. Well, not infinite. It was just still loading when I started the Wargaming stream. And so I gave up on it. But at least the Microtech mercenary missions were starting to populate. So at least the missions were okay. And I'm only like one mission away from being the next level of rep. There's no like character levels or anything, no experience points or anything like that in the game. But there kind of is, and I appreciate that they've implemented this reputation system. Because originally they did not have a reputation system. They were planning on doing a not a skill-based system, but kind of a skill-based system. Okay, there's quite a few chats. The skill-based system they were talking about was a training-based system. All right, let's see what you have to say. Oh, so you were there when it was lagging. Okay, cool. And yeah, the Australian server has been your go-to. Yeah, the Asia server just wasn't keeping up with the demand or something. I don't know. I thought it would be good because of the hour. You know, late night. It'd be early morning there, like 2 or 3 in the morning. So I figured it would have less strain on the system. But I have a feeling, this is just a gut feeling, I have a feeling they put less resources into keeping the Asia server smooth. And I bet you they put more resources into the US and EU. I bet you, because let's just say they only have 10 servers. I know they've got a lot more than that, but I'm just using that as an example. They might put 1 in Asia, maybe 2 or 3 in Australia, and then like 3 in the US and 3 in the UK, or the EU, I should say. And, but even with this 3 in the US and the EU, it's still slower because of the demand. But I could be wrong. I could be way off base. I don't know, it just feels like when I'm playing late at night, it feels like Australia has the best server tick rate. You would think it'd be pretty low because of the lack of internet cabling that goes to Australia. You know, the under the sea internet cable. I think this coffee is running right through me. I might have to go take a 5-minute break. Yeah, I normally don't have coffee this early in the morning. It's weird. I usually have like a coffee later at night, Maybe that's why I'm up so late. But coffee has a tendency just to rush right through me. I think it is. I'm going to be right back. So hold on the fort, keep everybody company, and I'll be right back. All right, I'm back, guys. I'm gonna have to put you guys on a temporary. What do I do with my glasses? I think I left them in the bathroom. All right, so I'm gonna put you guys on a timeout just for a minute because I have to check something on the internet. So my water is not working. I flushed the toilet and no water appeared. So yeah, I don't know. I know the bill is sitting in front of me. I just don't know. I haven't looked at it in a while. I wonder if that's it. All right, I'm coming back. Now I'm just trying to find the Wargaming Weekly. There we are. All right, let's get this camera back where it belongs. Sorry about that, guys. My water got shut off. I guess I had missed a bill payment or something. So I just paid the invoice. Now I don't know if that means they're going to reinstate the service anytime today or not. We'll have to. I'll give it a couple hours and then I'll check again. And if it is a problem, then I'll call and say, hey, made a mistake. Overlooked the bill. And it was also really, I noticed it was also really high. And there was a message on the website, that's where I went to pay it, that said, are you noticing your bill is really high this month? I'm like, yes. And the reason was they billed 46 days this month, where they only billed 33 days last month. I don't know why that is, or why they would do that. But basically, I got billed a month and a half. And a month and a half, it's still, it was like 3 times what I normally pay. So I don't understand what's going on. So now my mind is like racing, not racing, but like concerned and curious and worried and that's all right. It's not going to be the end of the world. This archer, okay, there you go. Let's see, he didn't want to stand up. Yeah, the blue moon. I'm really, really pleased with the blue moon models. Either the 100 Years War or the American War of Independence. Now, I have some Blue Moon Romans. I'm not that impressed with them. I think the Old Glory Romans are way better. Okay, maybe not way better, but they're definitely better. But the American War of Independence and these 100 Years War Archers and the men-at-arms that I used for my Burgundians are definitely better. They have like slightly bigger bases, so they stand up a lot easier. The issue with bigger bases, though, sometimes, depending on what game you're playing, might prevent them from fitting on a movement base. But with Meg, you got more than enough room, especially if it's a loose unit. The close units are a little harder. Now, there's a unit of like close cavalry, which is rare, like cataphracts. And you got to put 4 horses on one base. That's like really hard to do. That's pretty much one of the reasons why I don't play any armies that have cataphracts in them. Because I can't get the horses to fit on the base. I mean, I can get them to fit, but they'll be like crammed in there. Which I think is the point. Because they're close order cavalry. I don't know if you can see this on my finger, but there's like mold release on my thumb. It's like a black mold release and a black mold release on my fingers. And that's even after I washed them. You know, I wash them in soap and water to get the mold release off, at least the majority of it. Part of the reason the main reason why I do that is so that when you paint them, you're painting on the metal of the model and not some powder mold release. Because if you paint the mold release, like if you don't wash a model and you just say, okay, I just pull them out of the bag and I start painting them, there's a good chance that through gameplay the paint will just flake off. Because the mold release will flake off. That's the whole reason why they have mold release, so the model will pop out of the mold. And by washing it, it's not 100%, but at least you get like 90% of the mold release off, and it allows the paint to stick. Now, if you use a good primer, it won't matter too much anyway, because some primers will just eat right through the mold release. But there's other primers that won't, and it'll flake off. In the old days, I used to paint a lot of soft plastic models. You know, like Aerofix and Italeri and Eschi and stuff like that. I did a World War II in 1/72. I had hundreds of them, maybe even thousands if I counted them. But I had a lot of them. And I painted them, and you play with them for a couple of months, and you'll notice that, like, anything that bends, like maybe antennas or rifle barrels, slings, you know, whatever would be flexible on the model, over time the paint would just flake off of it. There's two reasons for that. The mold release, because I didn't wash them. I wasn't smart enough. And the nature of soft plastic is it's smooth. It's super smooth, and paint doesn't want to stick to it. You know, even if you get the mold release off, the nature of a plastic model is just so smooth that paint just sits on it. It doesn't adhere to it. And then Krylon released a new type of paint. This was many years ago, guys. In the 90s. Krylon released this new type of paint. They called it Fusion. And when I bought it, you know, or when I discovered it, the bottle or the can would say on the can, made specifically for plastic. And I was like, okay, what does this do? And I read it, you know, read up on it. What it does is it kind of like, it's very subtle, melts the plastic, so it'll adhere to it. It'll adhere to anything else too, but it had kind of a little bit of an acetone in it or something that caused it to want to melt the plastic. And I started using it, and I never had that problem ever again. And I discovered recently, I think it's Rust-Oleum, has a gray primer called Self-Etching. And I think it might kind of be the same type of primer. But this primer says it'll self-etch into metal. Like engine blocks or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's overkill for plastic. Also, Blue Moon gives you these little accessories. There should be 5 of them, but I only count 4. Unless I'm missing one. One might be hidden under there. But It's arrows stuck in the ground. And if I do only have 4, that's okay. There's one. It was just standing up. There's 5. Remember that army list? You remember where it had retinue, which were the superior, the drilled troops or the superior longbowmen? I'm going to add those to their bases, just to differentiate them. And basically, I'm making 5 tugs, right? So I'm thinking I'm going to give them a livery according to the noble that they are fighting for. You know, I'll just find 5 earls or dukes or whatever they are, barons or lords of some kind, some knights. Find out what their livery is and paint everybody in that tug similarly. I can't do them exactly because the variety in the models, the armor variety and the clothing variety. Now, I could put all of the same model in the same tug, but I don't think that would look good. And the men-at-arms that are in that tug, since they're not knights, they're kind of like soldiers of that lord. They should have a livery that matches the lord's army, you know, his household or whatever. So technically, there's only going to be 5 paint jobs, or 5 color palettes, I should say, because each model's got its own unique clothing. So it might, like one might have a breastplate and another one might have a leather jacket. So there's going to be different colors or different paint jobs, but I'm going to try to colorize them. Plus, when they're on the table, with their men-at-arms, with all their other units, you can just look down at the colors and say, oh, that's the red and yellow group, or that's the blue and white group, or whatever. Now, a lot of these longbowmen are leftovers from the Burgundian starter army, because it came with more longbows than I needed. But it didn't come with 90, it only came with like 60. So I threw another Blue Moon package in there, which comes with 30. Well, I didn't count them, but well, there we go. I also need to go through and make a bunch of stakes. Stakes are an obstacle that, okay, these don't need to be filed. Ooh. All that metal fell off. Okay. All right, let's check to see what kind of chats we got going on. See if I missed anything. Or maybe open a server in the Gulf of America. That's funny. Also, they're not going to do that. Also, what does HYW stand for in your title description? 100-Year War. 100-Year War. You can set up auto pay or reminders sent to your phone for utility bills. Yeah, absolutely. I get emails all the time. My email, I don't know if I told you this, but my mailbox is inundated. I'm gonna have to start blocking some of these companies or whatever. But or I should set up a separate email account just for my bills or something, because I get emails from companies constantly trying to get me to do something for them, or trying to get me to recommend their game, or me to try to purchase their product for my store to sell. Or that's mostly what I get is, hey, do you want to buy this miniature purple dragon? No. Do you want to buy this stuffed elephant to sell at your store? No. And I've got, like, right now, if I was to look right now, I'd have over 2,000 emails. So to be honest, sometimes I overlook things. I mean, it happens. Okay, so I'm going to count these guys because he's dead. He's dead, Jim. Okay, hold on. Before I start trimming him. I'm not counting, I'm kind of putting them at 20 millimeters separations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's go a little higher than that. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Stop it, you bastards. Yeah, that guy might need to be filed some more. I think this is the guy that I was having issues with earlier. Much better. Yeah, it's 45. Coming up on 60. And there is one pose I don't like. It's this pose right here, where the guy has just shot his arrow and his hand is way back behind him. It's like he, and then his arm goes way back. I don't like that pose. Now I considered only doing 4 units because the French have 1 longbow unit, and I'm going to be doing the French, and it's the same Old Glory miniatures. Blue Moon, not so much. They're called English longbowmen, so they're not French. Okay, I got quite a few extra dudes here. All right, so we got 30, 60, 90, and 2 extra bases. Huh. No, that's more than 2 extra bases. That's 2 bases and 2 figures, because they're not 4-figure bases. I really miscounted when I was counting them. Or Blue Moon gave me more than 30. Which is also entirely possible. So, if I was to count just the Blue Moon models, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not sure about him. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 20. Now, some of these I can recognize. They are definitely Blue Moon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I'm not sure about that guy. So that's 30, just like I thought. Yeah, I think the rest of them are all Old Glory. What's good is it's hard to tell, right? I'm looking down at him, I'm saying, I don't know, that could be Old Glory, it could be Blue Moon. Yeah, that guy looks like a Blue Moon base. Remember I was telling you that their bases are a little bit bigger? His base is big, gigantic, ginormous. He's probably Blue Moon. And there's probably one more in this collection somewhere. I bet you Blue Moon gave me 32. That's 31. Or I miscounted. It doesn't matter. Okay, so I would have needed 12 extra, not 8 extra, to do a longbow unit for the French. Now, I've got peasants, I have men-at-arms, I've even got a couple of pikemen. Yeah, so when it comes time to doing the French longbowmen, I'm not going to buy a pack of 30 just for 4 figures. I'll put something else in there, like a longbow unit with a guy with a sword and a shield standing in the front or something. What do we got here? Hey Barnes, what are you saying? Saying, what's the size comparison between Blue Moon and Old Glory? What game are these minis for? Hive Mind says, what games are these? Hive Mind says, good to see you again. It's for a game called Mortem et Gloriam. I don't know if you're familiar with Meg. Right there, Mortem et Gloriam. This is the ancient to medieval miniature game. Can be played in any scale. But 15 millimeter is what I do, and these are 15 millimeter. When you're talking about size comparison between Blue Moon and Old Glory, depending on the model, there might be a slight difference. They're like my Romans, they don't feel right. They feel like they're too tall and too skinny, like they're elves or something. But the American War of Independence, they're exactly Old Glory, Blue Moon, exactly the same size. Now with these archers, I think there is a slight difference. Like this guy and this guy, This guy's Old Glory, this guy's Blue Moon. If I went to the top of the base where the bottom of his feet are, Blue Moon looks like it's about 1, maybe 2 millimeters taller. Maybe. Let me try a different pose. This guy's exactly the same size. Blue Moon, Old Glory, same size. Eyes across, straight across. He's like maybe half a millimeter taller. So there is a little bit of a variation. Maybe just a little bit. But guess what? Humans aren't exactly the same height. You know? Not every human is built the same. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is go through each model, all 98 of them, and trim off any loose flash or anything. Before I do that, I will read the chat. I can't read the chat with my metalworking glasses on. Hey man, hey, no worries, Barnes. That's why I'm here, to answer questions and work on my stuff. Now I'm only going to be working on them another 30 minutes or so, because I want to get ready for my Star Citizen game that I'm going to be playing this afternoon. Almost looks like there's extra flash at the bottom of this guy's bow. But it also kind of looks like the bow is just a little bit warped at the bottom. And I noticed that the Old Glory figures, not one of them has any arrows molded. You know, they have guys like drawing the string back, but there's nothing in the bow. You just have to kind of imagine it. But the Blue Moon guys, they actually have arrows. Like this guy, no arrow, even though he's drawing the bow. It doesn't matter though. At 15 millimeter, at 3 feet away, arm's length, on the table, you don't need to see that. And if you want, you could always snip a little piece of wire and lay it in there and make your own arrow if you really want to be that anal. So I've got just so you know guys, I've got a sale on my eBay store, so if you wanted to check that out, you're more than welcome to. It's got 2 layers to it. Everything in the store has a discount right now, a percentage off. But if you order $50 or more, you get free shipping in addition to that. And I carry painted models and new in the bag, new in the box. I just finished some World War II Germans winter with snow on the field and stuff like that. 28 millimeter, based up for like bolt action. So if that's something you're interested in, they're not on the store yet. You still have to take pictures and upload them to eBay, which I'll do today. But I'm going to also film a video, so be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification icon so you'll be notified whenever I upload or go live. But I've got this video I'm going to upload showing off the figures up close. Every time I finish painting something for the store and not for my personal collection, I'll do a video called "What Have I Done?" And that's to keep you up to date on what I painted for the store. Basically, just gives you a close-up. And then maybe twice a month, what I'll do is a store news update, just to let you know like what kind of product I've gotten in, or what kind of supplies, or any news, like if I've got a new sale or something like that. I'll have a video kind of just keeping you up to date on what's going on at the store. And then various projects will have videos as well. I didn't realize my microphone was so far away. But like, if I'm working on my American War of Independence, every time I finish a unit or build terrain or do anything for that project, I'll do a video updating you on the project. Also, if you're interested in learning the games that I play, like Mortem et Gloriam, I have a boot camp. I do boot camps for rule systems. So it walks you through, or I walk you through every page of the rule book. Some people say some people don't like my style. That's what I was getting at. Because it's not a 30-minute video that tells you everything you need to know about the rules. It's a boot camp. It basically, I take like an hour-long video and I cover chapter 1. You know, and then I take another hour-long video and cover chapter 2. So, and some people don't like it because I read from the book. I try to do, I try to keep it as true to the rules as I can, That's why I read directly out of the books. You know, I think I've got a second edition bolt action. I might have a first edition bolt action boot camp. I think I did a second edition What Has Changed from first to second. I did a Land of the Free boot camp that's not finished. It technically is finished. It's technically finished. But I have this finale video that I wanted to do that basically goes over all the special rules and the scenarios that are in the book. And then it would be finished. But I keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. Mainly because it's an ordeal for me to... Because what I like to do is set up the table, put miniatures on the table, and then as I go through the rules, I demonstrate with miniatures. Like I'll move the miniatures on the table and I'll show you what that rule actually means, or how you could visualize that rule taking effect. That's why the videos take so long, because you could read the book in like an hour. But I stop after every rule and I kind of say, this is what they mean. When they say 45 degrees from the commander and not from the end of the unit, this is what they're talking about. And then I show you on the table. Where, but this Land of the Free finale, I'm not going to put any figures on any table or anything like that. It'd actually be fairly easy, because all I'm going to do is record my monitor and have my PDF pulled up and just scroll through the PDF while you're watching me scroll through on the monitor. And then but I want to kind of talk about certain abilities. And this is where I keep postponing. There are certain abilities in the book that I don't agree with. I love the game. It's the best. It's the best version, or the best rule set for that era is Land of the Free. But only if you don't do a couple of things. And I want to discuss this. It's not a discussion. It's really just me telling. Because it's a boot camp. It's not a live stream or anything. But, and why I disagree with it. But a boot camp, a legit boot camp, would not put my personal opinion. It would just read the rules as written and explain it. Right? That's what I envision a boot camp. It's like, these are the rules. This is what the author wanted you to do. And this is why it goes this way. But I feel so strongly about a couple of these different rules that I can't let it go. One of them is the militia rule, and another one is the rifleman rule. Yeah, those are the two rules that I really want to talk about. And I'm not sure how I want to word it or phrase it. I could just go off the cuff, which is how I normally do my videos. To be honest, I normally just wing it. But I could just go off the cuff, and then if I don't like what I say, I can edit it. You know what I mean? Because it's live. It's not live, I mean. I probably should just go ahead and do that. But I'm not working on my 100 Years War project this month. I mean, let me rephrase that. I'm not working on my AWI project this month. I'm working on my 100 Years War project. Now, it was originally going to be Agincourt. This was back when I was playing Black Powder and Hail Caesar and those games, you know, the Warlord games, which, don't get me wrong, I think those games are awesome. But they didn't have any really supporting material for Agincourt. But they did have, they had medieval knights and stuff. You know, they had the longbow and stuff like that. So you could easily make an army list with knights and men-at-arms and longbowmen and stuff. But it wasn't enough. So I actually broadened my horizons and bought Sword Point because I watched a couple of people's videos. There's what do they call that game? Clash of Spears. I mean that was vocalized to me as being a very good system. But when I watched other people's videos, either explaining the game or playing the game, I didn't like it. But Sword Point had some really unique mechanics, and it was designed to be played with your miniatures that you already had for Hail Caesar. And so I picked that up, but I also picked up like every module. And it also it's a good game system. It's got some unique mechanics. But it just reminded me of Hail Caesar with a couple extra mechanics. And I was like, I don't know. It's not really for me. And I kept looking. And then I found this game called Meg, or Mortem et Gloriam. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a chance. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a partner with Plastic Soldier Company. I carry their product. I get, wholesale from them. And they carry Mortem et Gloriam miniatures. And they had the rule book. Actually, they had more than a rule book. They had a starter set, which was the rule book and a bunch of other stuff, like counters and dice and everything else. And because they use special dice in Mortem et Gloriam. And so I said, I don't know anything about this game. Let me order it. Let me check it out. Because I got it wholesale. When I got it in, You know, it was like 60 bucks or something for the starter set. I said, okay, I'll do that. If nothing else, if I open it up and I don't like it, I can always just sell it, you know, on the store. So I got it, I read it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this scratches all my itches. I can play Egyptian, biblical, all the way up to War of the Roses, you know? I can play 100 Years' War, I could play Romans, I could play Carthaginians and Macedonians against the Persians or whatever, all with the same rule set. Just like Hail Caesar. Hail Caesar, you can do the same thing. But Mortem et Glorium's got like 900 army lists. Free. That army list I showed you earlier is a PDF that you can download for free. All you need is a rule book. And the dice, because they use special dice. But everything else you could, and you can manufacture your own dice. Because they're six-sided. You could just say a 1 is this, a 2 is this. So technically you don't need dice. But the dice make it so much easier. Because they're color-coded. And they have symbols on them. And it just makes shooting and combat and maneuvering and everything. Oh, that's right. You need cards. But yeah, you could use playing cards and just write on them. You can use Pokemon cards and write on them. Whatever. But, I really, really like the Meg rules. I mean, so much so that another thing, you might not know this. I'm sorry, I'm rambling, right? But I'm writing my own set of rules for Napoleonics. And in my little preamble, the introduction, I let people know that I play a lot of different game systems, or have played a lot of different game systems, and I haven't really found one that is the perfect game system. But all these different game designers, they all have good ideas. You know? Maybe, well, not all of them, but a lot of them have some good ideas. Right? Like, one game might have this awesome way to conduct melee. And another game system might have this awesome way to do your shooting. And another one might have an awesome way to do command and control with your generals. Or whatever, right? I'm just saying, I'm just making all this stuff up. And none of them are perfect. But if I was to take the melee system from one game, the shooting system from another game, and the command and control from another game, and kind of write it into a cohesive system that blends all of them together, that would be like my perfect system. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm writing my own Napoleonic rules, because I don't think I need to touch the ancient world, because I think Meg does an awesome job with ancients. But I also play a game called Battle Group. That also came from Plastic Soldier Company. But Battle Group is it's written for the scale that I want to play. When I say scale, I mean battalion, not squad or platoon like Bolt Action, which is not a bad game. It's an excellent game if you want to play just a squad or a platoon. But when you start talking about a whole company, not even a company you probably could do. But when you start talking about a whole battalion on the table, you can't really do it. So I picked up this battle group. Awesome set of rules. But guess what? It falls into the category of it's got some good ideas, but it's not 100% good. So I kept looking. And I found a game called O Group, which is the same terminology as battle group. It's just British. It's like an organizational group or something. And where battle group, I think, is more of a German term. In the U.S. at the time, they might have called it a combat command. Or a task force. But either way, so I picked that up, and it is really, really good. It's played differently. O Group is a stand of figures represent a platoon of guys. Kind of like, almost exactly like Command Decision. Command Decision had some good concepts. I played Command Decision for a long time, ran a number of campaigns in Command Decision. But it's limited. I played Spearhead. I thought it was a pretty good game. Spearhead had a really good command and control system, but everything else was basically just dice rolling. But then I found O Group and I said, okay, this is freaking awesome. It's not played at the scale of Command Decision. It's played at a battalion scale. And that's the same as Battle Group. So I'm sticking with O Group from World War II. And but I really like the defeat mechanics from Battle Group. Morale. Your army morale. I really like the Battle Group army morale. I think that's the best system I've encountered. So I plan to crib something similar to that in my set of rules, my Napoleonic rules. So I'm taking a World War II rule and I'm going to use it in my Napoleonic rules because I think it works. It's not as fast as Meg. Meg is super fast when it comes to army morale. But Meg, as a whole, in general, is a really fast game. And so its morale system works with it. I might use, and okay, let me back up a little bit. So when I first started writing these rules, I said to myself, I love the way Meg does their combat. It's really good for sword and shield and archery and stuff. And archery is nothing but muskets, you know. I could just use the shooting rules for muskets and use the hand-to-hand rules for melee. In Napoleonics, they've got cavalry and artillery and everything like that in Meg. So that's almost a one-to-one translation. And then I said, okay, command and control, I'll use Napoleon's Battles because they've got a really good command and control rules. And when I say really good, I'm trying to do 3 things. I want my game to be fast, where we can play a game in a few hours, which Napoleonics has a hard time doing that. And I want to do that. I want it to be fun. I don't want it to be tedious or boring. So I want it to be fast, fun, and playable. Meaning you could teach someone how to play it in maybe 15 minutes. And get them started moving figures and rolling dice. So as long as it's fast, fun, and playable, and I use these different mechanics from different systems that I really like, I have to adjust them and modify them a little bit to make them work with Napoleonics. And a shooting system from one game and a morale system from another game might not jibe, so I would have to go through and kind of adjust them a little bit so that they are compatible with each other. But I got off subject again. When I started writing these rules, my plan was to lean heavily on Meg, because I really like these rules. I was going to lean so heavy that I even started basing my figures, my Napoleonic figures, as if using the Meg basing convention. And then I was going to use the Meg measurement convention. Meg uses something called base widths. So depending on the scale of your game, 28 millimeter, 40 millimeter, whatever the base scale width is. So in 15 millimeter, a base width is 40 millimeters. And so if a unit can move 2 base widths, it basically means he can move 80 millimeters. I even made some rulers that were in 40 millimeter increments. So like if a javelin can shoot, if a javelin can be thrown 2 base widths, or if a bow can shoot 3 base widths, or a cannon can shoot 8 base widths, or whatever, the ruler is set up for that. So I thought I was going to base all my units according to Meg. So I started basing all my French And then I came to the idea that no, I can't form the formations that I want. It's going to take up too much table space. The real estate will be too big. I need to pivot and go with a more conventional basing system, like Hail Caesar or black powder. And so all my British and allies are based 20 millimeters wide by 30 millimeters deep, and I put them in a square. And so that basing system works really good because it's almost exactly the same as Napoleon's battles, which if you didn't know, I'm a grand master at Napoleon's battles. Never lost a tournament. I'd have to really think hard, but I think I've never lost a battle. I might have lost some battles early on. Maybe my first year of playing it. But first edition, back in the old days, Avalon Hill. Back in the 80s. Yeah, I think 88, 89, I think is when I started playing Napoleon's battles. But I lost interest in it because I was too good. I sold all my Napoleon's battles armies, and I was like, I don't want to play this anymore. I got no challenge. Nobody, it's not fun anymore. Mainly because there are rules in Napoleon's battles. They make sense, and I understand the philosophy behind them, but they're not like in your face strategy, right? But if you know those rules, and I knew the rules upside down and inside out. If you do those things, you can't lose. You will win every fight. And winning fights is how you win the game. Not taking objectives. I have a friend called Mike. I haven't talked to him in a while. I probably should contact him. So Mike and I were on a team one time. And he asked me a question. Very, very legit question. He said, why are you not even trying to go for the objectives? Right? Why are you just slaughtering the enemy's army? Because I was putting my units in position, which I always do, to destroy the enemy. And I ignore the objectives. Because I know that I can destroy the enemy army before the game time runs out. if I dedicate troops to taking an objective that I don't need, those are wasted troops that I could have used to destroy the enemy. Because at the end of the game, there's a time limit. At the end of the turn, the last turn, you stop, you count casualties, and you count victory points. And to the layman, you think, oh my gosh, I need to take that town because it's worth like 150 victory points. And each casualty is only worth 1 point. Right? You count your objectives, and then you count your casualties. And whoever has more wins. Right? And so I told him that. And I'm like, but if you wipe out your enemy's army, you win the game. Right? There's two ways to win. Take objectives, get victory points, or destroy your enemy. And because I knew the ins and outs of the rules, and because other players would focus on victory points, and I wouldn't, I could position them psychologically into positions that they can't win. And I would just wipe out armies constantly. Every time I played, 99% of the time, your army would reach a certain number of casualties. It's not 100%, but once you get to a certain percentage, like 50% or something like that, your army is basically useless. And most players either concede or their army has to withdraw, and I'd win. So, I'm sorry, I went through that whole diatribe of Napoleon's battles, but basically, I based them up like Napoleon's battles, but then I thought to myself, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go back to... Okay, let me read some of these chats that I missed. What size comparison? What game are these for? Good to see you again. Thanks. Hive Mind is asking me what's the best joke I've ever heard. I've got a joke. I do have a joke if you want to hear it. But before that, I have my eye on Battle Group. O Group. I find too infantry heavy for my tastes. Okay. I get that. So let me rephrase that. You find O Group too infantry heavy and not Battle Group? They both have armor. They both have infantry. You can play any type of battle with either game system. So if you want to have like an armored battalion, all tanks, you can do that with O Group. If you want to have an infantry battalion with just 1 or 2 tanks added on for support, you can do that with O Group. O Group is infantry heavy. I'll admit that. I will say you are right. The initial intent of O Group was to have an infantry battalion take objectives with hidden units and things like that. The designer of O Group has released some support material that will give you will explain. Let me rephrase that. Will explain how to make full armor battalions, which you could do anyway. I mean, if you're a World War II history buff and you know what a World War II infantry battalion is supposed, I mean, armor battalion is supposed to have in it, you can already do that. But because O Group is not man to man, like Battle Group is a 1-to-1. Everything is what it is. So if you've got 10 miniatures, that's 10 men. If you've got 2 tanks on the table, that's 2 tanks. If you got a Jeep, that's a Jeep. And if you've got, so it's kind of like fast play, bolt action. But it's got a weird army morale system, and it has a spotting. Battle Group has a spotting system that I think is unnecessary. I understand the reason to put it in the game, and that is really the whole premise of that game, is that spotting system. And without that spotting system, you're not really playing Battle Group. But I think it slows the game down quite a bit. Because every time you shoot, okay, let me rephrase this. Not every time. Okay. Every time you shoot, you have to decide if you're shooting suppressing or direct fire. If you're shooting suppression, you roll a bunch of dice to hit, and all you really do is suppress the enemy. You put their head down. There is a very odd, random chance that you will actually do a casualty, but most likely you're not going to do a casualty. But with direct fire, you can definitely do casualties. But at that point, you have to roll to see, after you commit, like Squad A is definitely shooting Squad B, you have to roll to see if they can see the enemy. And if they can't, they're done. And so you have to roll to see, and there's charts that you got to kind of finagle to figure out what the modifiers are and what you need to roll to spot them. And then once you've spotted them, then you roll to hit them. And there's charts to figure out if you can hit them or not. And I personally think my Napoleonic rules are not going to use that system. Well, you wouldn't think you would need it with guys online shooting at other groups online, but standing out in an open field. But I'm not going to use a double roll. Same thing with the saving throw. When you get hit, you roll in Battle Group. When you get hit, you roll a saving throw to see if you actually were killed. And that reminds me of Warhammer. That, and it's of course, remember, a lot of people have played Warhammer, and they kind of crib off of that rule. Black Powder uses the same rule. You roll to hit somebody, they get a chance to save to see if they actually get hit. And my system's not going to have saving throws. And it's not going to have a spotting roll. Because To me, okay, now think about this, or let me think about this. What am I simulating? I'm simulating not whether my guys can see you. I'm not simulating whether my guys can hit you. I'm not simulating whether or not you can avoid being hit. What I'm simulating is, when this unit attacks, does someone die? That's it, right? So we're going to the basics. If you're in cover or harder to see, or you're hidden behind some kind of bush, that can be a modifier to your shooting. It doesn't need to be a separate roll. If you're behind a wall, or if you're wearing plate armor, that can be a modifier to the die roll. It doesn't have to be a separate roll to resist damage. So I would combine all of that into one roll. That's what I'm saying. And O group does that. O group is fast. It's very fast. Some might say it's too fast. But I can play bigger battles, like a battalion on the table, in 4 hours, right? O group, you're only playing a company or two in the same 4 hours. It's a slower, it's kind of like, if you think of it like man-to-man would be bolt action, the next step up would be like a company or a battle group engagement, which would be battle group. And then the next step up would be a battalion engagement with multiple companies. That's O group. And then if you want to go regimental, like you want to have like an entire battlefield with multiple battalions moving around, that's command decision or spearhead. Okay, I'm not going to put these on their popsicle sticks on this stream. It's already 11:30. I'm going to end the stream with a joke. Okay, because Hive Mind asked for a joke. He's going to get it, even though I don't know if he's even still here. But since he asked, he might watch this on the follow-up. Okay, how do I start this? Okay. A reporter goes onto an army base. The reporter goes up to a major and says, "Major, I'm doing a survey. I need to ask a question, and then I'm doing like a paper on how much work versus how much pleasure you get out of sex." And the major goes, "Oh, well, I can answer that. Let me think about that. I think it's about 75% work and about 25% pleasure." And he's like, the reporter's like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting. Mostly work. Okay, got it." And then he finds a captain in front of a big office building, a headquarters. He goes, "Captain, what percentage of sex is work and what percentage is pleasure?" And he goes, "Oh, that's easy. That's about 50-50. Some of it's work, some of it's pleasure." And he's like, "Okay, let me write that down. That's pretty good." Then he goes up to a lieutenant, right, who's coming out of the let me rephrase it. He goes into the office building and there's a lieutenant there, and he asks him, hey, Lieutenant, I've been asking these guys, this major and this captain, and now you, what percentage of sex is work and what percentage is pleasure? And he goes, oh man, it's 75% pleasure and 25% work. Yeah, it's mostly pleasure. And he writes it down. He's like, man, I'm getting all these different responses. And then he sees this private working on a typewriter over in the corner. And he goes over to him and says, hey, Private, do you mind answering a question? He's like, no, not a problem. And he goes, now, when it comes to sex, how much of it is work and how much of it is pleasure? And he's like, oh, I can answer that easily. It's 100% pleasure. Because if there was any work involved, they would have me do it. Okay, I hope that satisfied your itch. All right, guys, I'm out of here, and you guys have a great rest of your day. And if you want to come back in about 30 minutes, I'm going to be playing some Star Citizen.